All right. So first of all, thank you very much, obviously, for everybody coming and being on here on a Monday night. I know everybody is busy with various things going on. Hopefully, we'll be about an hour, potentially longer if we have a couple of questions throughout. But when I was kind of going through what topics and themes we wanted to cover, I wanted to try and do some differentiation in regards to what we were exploring for the themes and topics that are necessary for coaches. So one area that I constantly hear from everybody that I work with within the OHTSL is about the mental side of the game, or the non-physical side, and how we can help these young players get through that part of the game, because it is a very difficult part to learn. And it's an aspect that we all play, and a psychologist hat that we all have to wear at times. So I brought in our expert, Ryan Virtue, who is actually with the Positive Coach Alliance. It's an organization that I'll let him talk in a little bit more detail about, but I've been very fortunate to have gone through a couple of PCA workshops throughout, just various things I've been doing, various courses. So I am very, very happy and honored and lucky that he decided to come on, and the organization is kind of pairing up with us tonight to hopefully help us all be a little bit better in a small way. So Ryan, I'm going to turn this over to you. I'll let you do some chatting. And for those of you who could see him, don't be jealous of all the baseball hats behind him.
Well, first of all, thanks so much for the opportunity to be here. And Marcy, I just want to quickly applaud you for creating this series. I think it's a really big deal for people in leadership positions like yours to extend themselves beyond what is typical, especially this time of the year, to provide learning opportunities for coaches, for administrators, for parents, and everybody in between. Because as weird as it is to say, in a time like this, because there's not a lot of positives, and I really hope we never have to go through anything like this ever again. But there are definitely some positives that come from this. And one of the big things that we want to make sure as PCA is, when we're able to return to play, that we're able to return to play in a significantly better place than when we ended play the last time, because this is a real big opportunity to take that step back. We've been kind of forced to take that step back. And so being able to look at ourselves in the mirror, figure out, hey, regardless of which position we hold, whether it's parent or coach or administrator, how do we get better during this time so that we can serve our kids at a higher level when we get back? So Marcy, applaud you and obviously everybody that is on this webinar and has participated in previous webinars. Applaud you as well for continuing to try to get better to serve your kids. So always good to see. I want to quickly just provide a background of a personal background. My coaching experience in soccer is minimal to the point that I am a current U5 soccer coach for my 4-year-old son. So admittedly, I'm not a soccer guy by trade, but I played collegiate baseball. I worked in collegiate athletics administration for 10 years. And so know a lot of the ins and outs of what you deal with as an organization overarching, and the importance of continual education in training. And so what I'm going to cover today is kind of a snapshot of a couple different aspects that we bring to the table in terms of coach education, a little bit of leadership education, and then a little bit of parent education as well. Personal background, you might pick up a little bit of an accent on certain words, so feel free to make fun of me all you want. I am Canadian. Like I said, I'm a horrendous Canadian. I played baseball instead of hockey, and believe it or not, my wife, who's from the Cleveland area, played ice hockey in college, so we're a really backwards relationship. But my whole background, again, in collegiate athletics, I hit a point in my career where I was trying to figure out, okay, if I'm not doing what I'm doing now, what would I do next? And the biggest thing I really looked at in terms of the biggest issues we were facing in the collegiate space was the mental health of our student athletes. There's a lot of administrators that would talk about revenue generation, the facilities arms race, and recruitment, and all those types of things. But the biggest thing for me was the mental health of our student athletes. And one of the big things that I came, to a conclusion of was, it's not like these kids are becoming collegiate student athletes and then they run into all sorts of mental challenges within that 4 years. Sure, there might be some things that trigger, some mental health reactions and some challenges that they need to overcome. But so much of mindset starts in the youth and high school level. And a lot of the culture that's been established in youth and high school sports that's become a little bit more win at all cost, a lot more technical, a lot more sports specialization. Some of the challenges that we run into when we hit that at an earlier age is self-identity of young athletes is so tied to what they do, not who they are. And there's a significant difference between those two. And so I'd started doing some research on, what can I do to help tackle the challenge, and came across PCA. And so started looking into them a little bit. And the more I got to know about the organization, the more I realized I wanted to be a part of it. And so about 2 years ago, I made a passion move out of the collegiate athletic space to PCA to tackle a lot of mindset stuff. And a lot of it is obviously specifically for the kids, but so much of the way to change mindset for kids is through adults, because in the youth sports space, kids simply emulate the adults around them. And so it's really important. And so I really want to make this interactive. There's going to be some different points that I will encourage you to go to the chat box and type in some different things. Encourage you to open your mind up a little bit. I'll be conversing with Marcy a little bit. If there's any questions at any point as we're talking, by all means, please feel free to drop it in that chat box, because we certainly want to be able to address any questions and talk specifics while we have you. But overarching, I want to quickly talk about the development zone. So this is our overarching concept of PCA. And the development zone is the way we look at a culture of an organization. Within the youth sports space, there's really 4 main constituent groups. And I reference this like a 4-legged stool, okay? Just to oversimplify. The first leg of the stool is leadership. And so, it's really important that leadership understands, the importance of their role. In the youth sports space, in the high school space, there's a lot of turnover, in leadership roles, and it's volunteer driven in the youth level, travel level. But what's really important is that there's a really clearly defined mission of the organization, because as there's changes in leadership, we need to make sure there's a constant. And that constant should be the mission and why that organization exists. But we can't just simply state what our mission is. We need to be able to communicate it. We need to be able to defend it. So we provide workshops, tools, training, resources for leadership as we go through everything. Second leg of the stool is coaches, and we'll dive in a little bit more to this today. But we train coaches to be what we call a double goal coach, okay? And I want to be very clear on what you see in terms of the wording on the screen here. Strives to win, and then strives to teach life lessons and build character. One of the big things with PCA and with mindset.
Ryan, real quick, I don't mean to interrupt you. Do you want, we cannot see it. Did you want to put it up here?
Yes, I do. Hold on a second. Let me pull up this screen again. I apologize.
Yeah, we see you right now.
There we go.
No, I still see you. If not, I can quickly grab it. There we go.
Got it?
Should be coming. Yep, there we go.
Perfect. Thank you. So that single goal leader, double goal coach, we really emphasize strives to, because strives to means we're focused on process. Okay. We don't simply say our goals are to win and teach life lessons, because you can't always control the outcome of winning. As much as painful as that is as a coach to say, I hate to admit it, you cannot control whether your team wins or loses. You also, in a lot of ways, can't always control what kind of lessons your athletes learn unless you're really intentional about the environment that you create for them. A lot of people say, hey, sports teach, right? Sports teach life lessons. Well, sports themselves don't really teach, right? The teaching is the intention that's behind it. And that comes from adults, right? Again, coaches, parents, and administrators. Uh, Third leg of the stool, as you can see the top right corner there, is a parent, right? And a lot of youth sports organizations, a lot of schools tend to see a lot of issues with parents. And my big thing with parents is they're the easiest group to blame, I think, but I think they're unfairly blamed for a lot of the challenges that we face. Because a lot of times the only guidance we provide sports parents is here's a code of conduct, which is basically a list of things not to do. Good luck. Oh, by the way, I'm coaching your kid. You stay out of it. Oh, by the way, I need you to bring snacks, and I also need you to fundraise for us. So it's a very broken relationship, and we need to be really intentional. And as coaches, we're talking overarching development zone, right? That includes leadership, but within your own circle, within your own program, your own team, you're the culture creator for your team. So it is really up to you to create and develop a really positive relationship with the parents, because you guys should be able to work hand in hand. So if I, for instance, let's say I'm coaching, a high school age kid, and I run through all my tricks, right? I run through everything, and I can't figure out how to get to this kid, right? He's not listening. He's not listening. He's not listening. I've tried everything I know. I should have a good enough relationship with that parent that I can go to that parent and say, hey, I've tried X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z. What are some of the things that you do at home that work with your son? Or what are some of the things that work in school? What are some of the things that work in other aspects of their life that I can try to utilize to create more, effect on this kid? So that relationship is vitally important. Plus, they spend more time with their parents than they do with you. And one of the number one reasons why kids stop having fun is because of the car ride home. I don't know if many of you have heard that, but when we call it the PGA, the post-game analysis, right? You sit your bum after a game in the passenger seat, and mom or dad just start talking play by play about the game, the mistakes that you made, what you should have done differently. That ruins kids' experiences. And so we need to be able to proactively talk to parents about not just here's what not to do, but here's what you can do an alternative. Here's how to handle that car ride home, right? Here's how to handle different things proactively. So that's a little bit about the parent piece. And then the fourth leg is obviously the athletes themselves. And I don't know any coach that doesn't want an athlete that strives every single day to make themselves better, to make their teammates better, and that honors the game in the process. And I'll get into a little bit more what those mean. But the reason we use the four-legged stool analogy is oftentimes in each organization, and you can think even within your own team, one of these legs can oftentimes be particularly weak, right? And so that stool becomes pretty wobbly. If you don't address that weak leg, it can oftentimes take a second one with it. So within an overarching organization, let's just say parents were the weak leg, right? We can't figure out how to get to the parents. They're all negative. They berate the officials. They berate the coaches. What can we do about that? Well, if you don't tackle that, oftentimes those challenging parents take good coaches with them, okay? Or their kid sours and just wants to quit, or they quit while they're even worse. They quit when they're still in front of you and you're trying to work with them, and you see some positive lights in a short window of time while you work with them, and then the second they leave, it's gone. It's wiped out. So it's really important we shore up those damaged legs, and then still elevate all aspects of what we're doing in support of our kids. So that's our overarching approach. And to achieve that as PCA, we provide, again, tools, resources, and training. So we do live interactive workshops. We have online courses. And at the end, I'll quickly cover, I'm going to send Marcy a discount code. So if you guys want to take the actual online coaches course or any of our courses, you can at a discounted rate through this. But that's our overarching philosophy. So I'd like to just go into a real quick activity here And I'm going to ask Marcy as you guys are thinking, but hopefully you can see on screen. I want you to think to your playing days, and I want you to think of the best coach you ever had. Okay. And in that chat area, I want you to enter, 5 words or less, why they were your best coach. So go ahead and do that. And while you're doing that, Marcy, I want to ask you who your best coach was.
I would probably say that my best coach was actually one of my travel coaches. And I'm going to be way more than the 5 words or less. So I'm not going to follow your rules on that.
That's great.
But I think that the reason that they kind of specifically jumped out in my mind is they took the time to get to know me as obviously an athlete, but also as a person. And then they individualized everything. So I would have constant conversations. I was told, what I needed to work on, and then given positive affirmation, but also, positive criticism on things that I could continue to do. And I think that's why they kind of stuck in my mind as someone who took the time to get to know me and not just the number on the back of my jersey.
It was clearly focused on your development as an individual, not just as a player.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I mean, for me, my coach saw more in me than I saw in me, and challenged me in different ways that I didn't think was possible. I would say, and I'll cover a little bit about what this means, but I would say at certain points, I was more of a fixed mindset player. I'm only good at this. I'm only good at this. I'm not good at this. So I'm not going to do this. And he really pushed me. And I had a chance to play up different levels, and saw, signs of what he was talking about that gave me the confidence. And that was a really big deal. I'm looking at the chat box here and I'm seeing some great responses. Cared about my success. That's huge. Good example, modeling behavior. I'll get into that in a little bit as well. Encouragement, challenge to do the best, broke us down and made us a team. That teamwork aspect is so huge. Treated all players equal. Baseball coach, funny, positive leader, drove you to work hard. Helped to realize that the team went beyond the field, cared about everyone on the team on and off the field. Leader. These are amazing things, right? Notice none of you dove straight into taught me how to kick the ball really well, right? We didn't dive into skills and drills and X's and O's, right? We dove into really that a coach believed in us, right? Saw us as something more, wanted us to continue to grow and improve, cared about us as a human being, not just, like Marcy said, a number on the field. Those are really, really big. He didn't try to run the game from the sideline. He had something to say about your performance. So he criticized in private, right? We always talk about as PCA, again, I'll get into it in a little bit, but praise publicly and criticize privately. That's a very big tool to support the emotional development of your kids. So these are all amazing things. And this is when, you take this time that we're forced into with this COVID-19 forced pause, again, that I hope we never have again, but take this time to reflect and think, okay, are these the types of things that I'm displaying to my kids, right? This is clearly what matters, right? And I think what's great about this, you look at any of those things, right? Does your coach know that that's how they made you feel, right? Have you had those conversations to make them know, let them know? Because that's a really cool thing when you go back as a coach and you've got players that you had years and years and years ago that really remember the influence that you had on their lives. I mean, that's what this is all about. And I think a lot of the positive characteristics that we build through sports are what ultimately make us successful human beings, right? These things. And so one of my favorite quotes is this one right here by Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I know I try to live by this every single day. And I know, especially in this day and age, we hear a lot of people saying, those are just words, right? what we say is more than words because it has an impact on somebody's emotions, right? Think about your players and the way you approach them. Everything that you say in a position of power is consumed by them, right? And so, are there ways, and first of all, let me say there's some people that perceive positive coaching means it's sunshine and rainbows and kumbaya and everybody gets a participation trophy. That's not it. But we know there's certain methodology that actually results in peak performance and higher performance. And it's by creating a supportive environment that is purely developing intrinsic motivation in athletes as opposed to extrinsic motivation. Okay. The extrinsic motivation is a lot more individuals that only respond because somebody told them to do it. They don't understand it themselves. They don't believe it themselves. And so a lot of those coaches who are yellers and screamers, right? You might get in immediate instances, you might get that outcome-based success taking that methodology. But again, long term, we're developing people through sports. We're not developing athletes through sports. We're developing people through sports. Okay. And your biggest job is to develop and coach a person first. You coach people first. You coach the sport second. Okay. And the more we're able to take that approach, the more intrinsic motivation we're going to be able to develop in these kids. And then when they leave us to go on to play at the next level, or maybe they don't go on to play at the next level, they go into college, they go on to their professional careers, they're going to be family people, right? We're setting them up to have intrinsic motivation to carry them forward and allow them to pursue success on their own without just somebody telling them what to do. And I think it's interesting. Sorry, Marcy, go ahead. I think.
No, what I was going to say is it actually makes me think of what I see a lot. And I'm personally, and this is a personal thing, I'm not a fan of it, is a lot of parents today who are bribing their kids in regards to scoring goals or trying something or, doing something else. And again, you hear, the kid's very excited, of course, when they accomplish it, but then now the next time it has to be bigger and better.
Right.
And is that going to, like you said, lead to a long-term person, a long-term player who's going to want to eventually capture and accomplish those things for themselves when those, materialistic or outside support or resources aren't provided anymore? And I feel like it's also teaching, again, even with jobs or with school, how there are going to be things that you might not want to do to make yourself better. And how are you going to learn to do those on your own? And that's something I'm hearing more and more and more happening just with parents these days. And I don't hear it, luckily, not too much with coaches. I probably don't hear about it as much as it happens. But I think it's something that kind of hits exactly what you're talking about, is how can we continue to build intrinsic and, self-motivated players?
Right. Well, and I think a big piece of that, and it's what I'm going to get into here next. So that was a perfect segue. A lot of that is very outcome-based focus and mentality, right? We're going to reward you because you did this, right? Because you accomplished this. It's purely outcome-based. And that is very challenging because, as we know in sports, right, there's some days where you may play the best game as a team that your team has ever played and you lose 10-0, right? Because the other team is that much better than you. You played up, right, and still lost 10-0, right? That's actually a win, but in terms of the way a lot of people reward players, it's not. And so because they didn't win, they don't get the reward, right? Whereas we want to really focus a lot more on the process that we have control over, right? And so the first principle I want to cover is what we call the elm tree of mastery. Okay. And it's a pretty simple concept. And really what it does is it defines what is in your control. Okay. And I'm going to talk, obviously, like we usually do in terms of sports. But when you really peel it back, this has nothing to do with sports. It has everything to do with any aspect of life. So the E is for effort, okay? The L is for learning, and the M is for mistakes are okay, okay? Those are three really, really important pieces. So effort, learning, mistakes are okay. Those are all 100% in our control. It's really, we always want to put forward the best effort we possibly can, okay? And so as a coach, a lot of times what we need to do, and we encourage it within our parents as well, as Marcy said, is we need to be able to recognize and praise effort over outcome, okay? So when you have a kid that's going hard at a defender, right, and maybe makes a good slide tackle, right, or whatever it may be, but the player still makes a great move and gets around, right? Are you the coach that's still praising that kid, or are you the one that is focused more on how did you let that kid get by you? There's a huge difference, because what we tend to see when we focus only on outcome-based approaches, kids become hesitant, right? They will play to the point of fear of failure, and you'll never get 100% out of that player. So, you know, effort, it's always put forward your best effort. Always be willing and able to learn and adapt, right? So let's say you see a player on the field that makes the same move to the right every single time, right? How do you learn and adapt your positioning in order to combat that? And then understanding that making mistakes is okay. It's part of the game. It's actually encouraged, because that means you're trying to the point of failure. And if we can create that mindset within our athletes, it goes a really, really long way. But again, the importance of you doing that as a coach, you could perfectly emphasize Elm on the field of play. But if that's as far as your focus is on the development of your kid, and you're not really communicating with their parents as to what you're looking for, what you're rewarding, and why you're rewarding it, then again, they go back, maybe they didn't score a goal that day and they're on attack and they're the top goal scorer, and mom and dad have no idea what you're trying to focus on, right? Those parents could derail everything that you've just tried to work for through that kid. So it's really important that you emphasize this Elm mindset.
And along with that, real quick, I think something that will help with this, and this is something, again, I'm going to ask the coaches to kind of write in the chat box, and it's going to be an easy yes or no, is for the age that you're coaching, think about your players, and you can think about them in a majority sense, not necessarily individually, but how many of them truly believe that they are trying their best? And whatever that capacity is, and it could be yes, they are, or no, they aren't. And while kind of coaches are writing yes or no with that answer, I think it's an important way, and it plays into the ELM mentality, because I think for the most part, the players believe that they are trying their best. We as coaches know that their potential may be higher. And that's something that I think is really important, because a lot of times you hear coaches yell out, you're not giving me effort. But to the player, are they giving their best effort in their own mind? And at a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old, do they know that they can actually give more? And I think that plays into the learning and the mistakes are okay mentality, because I think that's where we have to figure out as coaches, in order to get them to hit their own peak performance individually, not necessarily as a team. How can we help them understand that while they think they're giving their best, they can actually give more in every aspect of the game?
Marcy, I love that. And the one word that I want to focus on just briefly is the word potential, because I can tell you there's a lot of coaches that see potential and immediately start trying to coach to that potential, right? Instead of seeing where the kid is now and making them one step better, and then one step better, and then one step better until they reach that potential. When we start seeing immediate potential, and again, this is a challenge with parents as well, right? Parents, their kid scores a hat trick, right? 5-year-old scores a hat trick, like, oh my goodness, my kid is going to be the next Pele. A lot of them will be like, oh, I got to get them to an elite travel program. I got to get them in this. I got to get in this. It's like, no, slow it down. right? We want to provide an avenue where they can continue to get better, but we need to continue to grow their love for the game. Okay. So there's really 3 stages of sports. Okay. There's the professional stage, okay, which is really high level college and professional sports, right? It's a job, right? They're playing at the highest possible level. It's a job. And I hate looping college athletics into that because it should still be, completely centered around the athlete. But at the highest level, I'm talking Power 5 type level. Um, in a lot of ways, it's been professionalized. Um, but there's that professional stage. Then there's the technical stage. Okay. The technical stage is where you get into maybe a little bit more sports specialization. You're getting into more private instructional lessons. You're getting into more, intent, focus on development. Okay. And then there's a romantic stage, right? Romantic stage is this is just fun, right? We're learning, but we're having fun. What's happening is that professional stage has trickled into the time frame that should be the technical stage, okay, which we're talking about high school aged athletes, okay, where really when you look at, and I'm going to use a stat that is all sports, not soccer specific. I apologize, I don't know the soccer specific stat, but if you look at all high school athletes across all sports across the United States, 6% have a chance to go on to play in the NCAA at any level in the NCAA. 6%. That means 94% of those athletes are not. But
I think
yet,
it's significantly less for soccer, actually.
I believe that because of the volume of kids that play. Um, so, and what we're trying to say is not, hey, we should stop our kids from playing because it's too hard to get into that. That's the opposite, right? We should want every kid to want to try to strive to get to that point. But we need to make sure we're creating this environment where if they don't get to that point, they're not a failure. And we didn't fail them in terms of their development. We've actually still prepared them for life. It's just the soccer aspect of their life is no longer going to be there in terms of their traditional approach to competitiveness. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, we see, the professional mentality trickles into the technical stage. Then what happens naturally is the technical stage trickles into the romantic stage, right? So we're seeing earlier sports specialization. We're seeing earlier, one-on-one training, right? Where it's becoming more intentional and kids are running into burnout earlier in the age because they're focused on one thing and their mind's not there to do that, right? And then obviously naturally as the technical stage shrinks, the romantic stage shrinks, but there's nowhere for it to go. It just shrinks, right? So it's everything's moved up the timeline, but there's nowhere for the romantic stage to go. So all of a sudden the real big focus on kids having fun through sports is being diminished. And that's a huge challenge. And that's where I look at a positive through this current scenario. We're seeing kids be a little more adventurous again. We're seeing some free play developing, whether it's with you or with, their parents or maybe with a sibling, right? I think that's a huge positive. And so one of the things that, if you follow any of the Aspen Institute's Project Play or any of those other pieces, I highly recommend it, first of all, if you don't. But the Aspen Institute Project Play talks a lot about free play, right? And the reality is we don't want youth sports to go anywhere. We're not sitting here going, oh, forget youth sports and structured sports. We need to go back to free play. That's not going to happen, nor should it, because there's a lot of good things about controlled environments that are structured the right way. But the right way is very, very key. And so I think it's, important that we continue to take that slow developmental process for our kids so we get them one step better, one step better, one step better, and allow them to have fun through this entire environment. The other one I want to quickly hit on, and where the Elm Tree of Mastery came from, has anybody read Mindset by Carol Dweck? Is anybody familiar with that book? Highly, highly, highly recommend it because she really dives into, thank you, Kirk. I'm glad you're aware of that book. She dives into basically this fixed mindset versus growth mindset. We're very fortunate that Dr. Carol Dweck is on our national advisory board. So she's been very instrumental in helping us deliver and develop our programming. Basically, the growth mindset, the fixed mindset is, I'm good, I don't need to get better, or I'm not good. Okay. And we see this with a lot of young athletes where maybe they've developed a little bit higher rate physically, right? Or they're just naturally a little bit better, okay? And they fall into this talent trap basically, where they're the best, they're the best of their best. I don't need to work hard because I'm already better than everybody else. That's fixed mindset, okay? And by us as coaches praising them for the outcome based, like, oh my God, oh my goodness, you're so good, right? Or oh my goodness, you're a great goal scorer, right? And not attributing that behavior to effort, right? So a lot of what we can do is just a simple tweak as a coach. Instead of saying, you are an incredible attack, right? It's, I can see how hard you've been working and the results are paying off, okay? That way we're emphasizing the effort and why they're seeing success versus, oh, you're just successful. Because again, when they get later in life, and again, why I got into this aspect, when there's a disruption to them as an athlete, them being the soccer player, they really struggle mentally with it, and it's heartbreaking. And we see it all the time where, I'm sure you have all seen it in your clubs where the best player all of a sudden gets passed and they really struggle with it. And you start to see them become more emotional on the sidelines, or you see them start, arguing more and pointing fingers more. You're not getting me the ball enough. Those types of things. A lot of that comes from that fixed mindset. And again, you guys as coaches have a real big opportunity to impact that. The growth mindset is very much creating this mindset of, I'm going to work hard to improve at this. That's what we want in kids. And again, that's the elm tree of mastery. I'm going to jump to the next thing here because I know I want to make sure I leave time for questions if there are any after this. But the next principle that we talk about, and actually I'm going to show you this right now. We won't spend a ton of time going through it, but I might pick a couple to have you in the chat box here talk through this. So one of the big things that we're key on is self-reflection. And so on our website, and again, Marcy will send our entirely free resource center, we have different evaluations for coaches, okay? And one of my favorite things to do is to have coaches take the evaluation form that we've created for athletes about their coaches, take it themselves. But have you, and what I'd like to do real quick is I want you to put yourself in the mindset of the kid that you struggle the most to interact with. They either don't listen, or you can't get through to them. They're really pig-headed. They're, they're just emotionally disrespectful to everybody. Whoever that player is that you just do not see eye to eye with. I want you to look through these, and I want you to think, okay, what would this kid say about me coaching? Okay, do they obey the rules? Do coaches show respect to officials? Right? We talk about the importance of modeling. Right? Again, a lot of times kids emulate adults. So if us as coaches are not respecting officials on the sidelines, how do we expect our kids to do it? Right? We can't sit there and say, well, I'll do what I say, not what I do. It doesn't make sense. Treating all players with respect. Can they say that? Right? Treated opponents with respect. Did we create this culture where they're the enemy and we have to kill them? Or is it, no, competition doesn't exist without the opponent, right? And at the end of the day, competition means to struggle together, right? And we need our opponents to be the best. I'd rather play an opponent to a 2-1 game where we're back and forth throughout the entire match than play a team that we beat 8-0. Because I know the 8-0 game, although outcome based, It looks a lot better. More kids scored, right? But do kids learn more in an 8-0 game versus, when they're trying to hold back and trying to be respectful of the other team versus, a situation where they're playing tight to an opponent. This one is big to me, redefining winner. Okay. You reward effort, not just results. Okay. So we used to always, there's a lot of organizations that use like a hard hat award, right? The kid that maybe wasn't the most successful on the scoreboard, the one that did everything right. Let's recognize them. Did my coach help players learn and improve in the sport? Did they help us bounce back from mistakes? This one is really important, and that's the next category that we're going to go into, and we're going to talk about filling emotional tanks and using positive reinforcement, encouraging players to do their best, that side of things. So think about that. And like I said, Marcy's going to, I'm going to, just in interest of time, move past this, but Marcy's going to send this survey out to you guys, this evaluation form out to you guys, so that you can take it. And I encourage you, again, take it from the position of the kid you just don't see eye to eye with. And then take it from the kid that you think you see really well eye to eye with. And if you have time, take it through the eyes of every single one of the kids on your roster. Because you'll be amazed to yourself in terms of when you try to put yourself in their shoes, how you portray yourself. Because I think that's really important for continued growth. So the next one I want to talk about is filling emotional tanks. And this is something I literally use every single day. I use it with my wife. I use it with my 4-year-old, my 2-year-old. I use it with my coworkers. I use it with everybody I come in interaction with, because I think it is the greatest thing I've ever learned in terms of understanding how to impact others' situations and their mindsets and their feelings in a lot of ways. Everybody has a gas tank, an emotional gas tank, right? Right now, just in the nature of where we are, some people are a little more on the empty side because there's a lot of things happening in our universe right now that are not in our control. And it makes us more uptight, makes us more concerned. It's just not a pleasant scenario, but there are a lot of things that we can do to really impact that emotional tank and fill each other's emotional tanks as we continue to go. I think what's really important to understand with your kids, every single kid is going to be at a different point in the emotional tank when they show up to the field of play, right? Whether it's a practice, whether it's a game, every single kid is going to be different. And here's the other part. Every single kid is going to show up at a different point every single day they show up at the park, okay? Because you have no idea what's happening in school. You have no idea what's happening at home. You have no idea what happened right before they got there, whether there was a passing in the family, whether there's so many different things. And the other element that we really don't know is the social media element, right? So much of our kids' self-perception is tied to what they do as an athlete, what they do in the way they interact with people in the classroom, and the way they interact with people online now. That is a growing element of a person's self-perception. And online bullying is very, very real. It's constant, it's 365, it's in your face, it doesn't go anywhere. And we can't control all of those things, but what we can control is when they get to our field of play, what we can do to fill their emotional tank. So a lot of times in practice is one of the best things you can do is have a couple kids, that seem maybe a little off that day, and allow them to pick the first drills, right, of practice. Usually they'll pick ones that they love, that they have fun with, right? Let them have fun when they first get to the practice field. Okay, naturally you'll start to see their emotional tanks grow and expand and fill up. And when you get to a point where they're more full, you're gonna get a bigger response out of them. They're going to respond more positively when you start getting into the meat of practice or the meat of the game where you really want them to be able to respond. There's actually what we call the magic ratio, okay, in terms of positive to negative interactions with our players, okay? And that magic ratio is 5 positives to every negative criticism, okay? And that is really, really important to remember. And I want to be clear again, like I said at the very beginning, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, right? For somebody, a lot of people are like, well, what do you mean I have to give 5 positives just to tell a kid or correct a kid's improper behavior? Well, not in that immediate instance, okay? But in terms of your overarching relationship with every single player, the closest you can get to 5 to 1, the better, okay? 5 to 1 is optimal. When you start getting less than that, obviously it sours the experience. And oftentimes we see, kids where, coach will say something will go in one ear and out the other, right? If you do the opposite and you swing to like a 10 to 1 ratio, it actually oftentimes has a negative impact as well, because then they look at everything as fake. Okay. So the things we really want to focus on, okay, what drains a kid's emotional tank? Okay. It's constant correction. Okay. It's and I get, we're coaches, that's what we're supposed to do. And I'll get to that here in a minute. But correction, sarcasm, kids just don't understand sarcasm. Okay. Disappointment, ignoring them, and nonverbals, right? And I want to emphasize the importance of nonverbals. How many times do we see a kid give up a ball and our immediate instinct is, right? Or, right? And it doesn't matter what comes out of your mouth. You could be screaming positives, right? It's okay, right? All they look over is see your negative physical reaction, right? And again, talking about parents, same thing, right? Until a kid, depending on the age that you coach, typically until about the age of 12 or 13, anytime a kid does something wrong, the first place they're going to look is their parent. Okay. And that's just human nature and where they're at in their development, because when they do something wrong at home, it's like that pause. Did mom or dad see? Right. And so that's what they do on the field. And then once they obviously develop, and you can impact that, because if you develop a level of trust with them, obviously you can switch that and encourage that. But it's really important that we explain this to parents too, because you see parents yelling and screaming and oh my goodness, I can't believe my kid just did that. The kid looks over, they see that, you just shut them down. And now we got to try to find ways to build them back up, and that takes time. So nonverbals is very, very important.
I think real quick to just add on to that too, Ryan, is it's important also for you as coaches, if you're a head coach, with assistant coaches.
Yes.
Because there's something about unity within a coaching staff at every age that you're coaching. Again, U9 to U15, all the way up, again, collegiately, internationally. I've done it all, and I've always been very hyper aware, because I've been in both the assistant role and the head coach role. And a lot of times the head coach will be talking about something, and if the assistant coach disagrees, their nonverbals shouted to the rooftops. And especially older kids, 12s, 13s, 14s, 15s, they're watching the assistant to see if everyone's on the same page and to see who they should be listening to and everything. So it's very, very important that if you're a head coach, you have a conversation with your assistant coaches about the nonverbals that they're portraying during whatever you're saying. And then obviously you being aware when your assistant coaches are talking. And the same thing, if you're in a halftime, a post-game, post-practice, pre-practice, whatever it is, and it's a discussion versus even an actual coaching in an environment, to watch your nonverbals when players are communicating with you. And that goes, again, just in conversation as much as everything. If you ask a question and a player gives you a response that you completely disagree with, if you immediately furrow your brow or you immediately shake your head, they're going to just completely stop with the path that they were going, which might have opened you up to why they're making that mistake. So it's very important that I read somewhere, and you might have heard of this, Ryan. It might have been a PCA workshop, now that I think about it, that they said that you should try as a coach, and it's very hard, and I am a complete culprit of this, where you're supposed to answer with, I believe it's yes and instead of no but.
Yes.
Have you heard of that before?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, is it a PCA thing?
We talk about it. We talk about criticism sandwiches. We talk about if you do this, then you will get this.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's all sorts of different ways that you can tweak your approach.
So that's a good challenge for the coaches even on this. Just in tomorrow's conversations with whoever, whether it's work, whether it's family, if you are talking to your soccer players, can you respond to things with yes and instead of no but? It's very hard.
It is.
It's
It is,
very hard.
especially when you're in the heat of competition.
Exactly.
And that's why it's so important that we practice these things and we continue to try to find ways to get better. And I just want to emphasize that assistant coaches, Marcy, spot on. I mean, I can tell you as a player, especially playing collegiately, I oftentimes had better relationships with my assistant coaches than I did with the head coach because they worked more individually on skills and development, as opposed to the head coach that had more overarching philosophical and X's and O's and game management stuff. So a lot of times players do develop deeper relationships with assistant coaches. And so that's really important. I want to spend a couple minutes just talking about what fills an emotional tank. I talked about what drains it, but what fills it, correction is one of them, right? But it's correction when you've established that mentality of, I know if I work hard at this, I'm going to improve. It comes from a position of belief that they can get better, that you have a huge influence over. So correction when you have that type of relationship is a very big thing because they feel like they can get better. Truthful and specific praise. Okay. This is one that I have to and continue to have to work on. Simply saying good job is not beneficial. Okay. Because especially when it's used in a situation where they did not do a good job, right? They can see you and read right through you. And so being specific, right? I know you didn't get the result that you wanted, but I saw the way you did this, right? Or I saw the way you did this. That's what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I want to keep seeing, right? Recognizing effort, recognizing those things and what they're doing and marking them and praising them. We talk a lot about one of our most important responsibilities as a coach is being a noticer of effort. Okay. So constantly praising effort, even if there is no result that comes from it, right? Getting back on defense, getting up quickly, being on the bench and cheering on your teammate and picking up different, defensive schemes or body positioning, whatever it may be, like noticing those constant efforts. And there's all sorts of tools on our website that you can grab and use all you want. We have a positive charting worksheet that you can use in practices to intentionally be like, I want to be looking for these 5 things today. And you can go through and make sure you check those off over the course of your practice. So giving truthful, specific praise, expressing appreciation, that is huge in the field of play and everywhere. But at the end of practice, right? Hey, you worked your tail off today. I really appreciate you doing that. That means a world to a kid, right? Even to a parent, right? I saw you. Thank you so much. I know you've got a lot going on. You got your kid here 15 minutes early. I was able to spend 5 extra minutes with them talking about XYZ individually. Like those appreciations go a really, really long way. Listening, very, very important. As coaches, we get into the mode where we want to tell a lot, right? We want to tell. Sometimes it's important that we listen, okay? And picking moments of coaching and correction is really important. In the heat of a moment when a kid is boiling and frustrated, that is not a time to tell them they did a poor job, okay? But there are times where we might want to ask permission, right? We want to say, hey, Marcy, I picked something up that you did, and is it okay if I give you some developmental information right now? And they might be like, not right now, coach. And you just got to learn to respect that, because if you give it anyways, it's going to go in one ear and out the other. And you might feel good about getting off your chest, but the whole point of saying it is to actually get them to develop through it. So you got to pick your times. And then nonverbals, right? Again, practice it. And one of the big things that I want to encourage you to consider doing, tape yourself, record yourself, It is amazing what you will learn over the course of a game, because I can guarantee you there's going to be different points that you'll be like, I know exactly what happened in that moment, right? When you read your own body language. And it is extremely eye-opening when you try to do video work with your kids. When you do video work on yourself, hey, you learn a lot about the way you act, the way you move, your body language, the way you're yelling and screaming. You might be yelling positive, but your face might be looking like this, right? There's all sorts of different things that you learn about yourself when you record yourself. I want to get into this is a parent pledge. I talked about at the beginning, again, tools. This is on our website that Marcy will send. I talked about, all we do is give, a code of conduct, which is a list of things not to do. This is a way to tweak it, right? And make it, I'm going to do this. I am going to do this. I'm going to do this. So just another valuable tool. The last principle I want to quickly hit on is honoring the game. Okay. And this is where we really get into modeling behavior. All right. Honoring the game, we talk about respecting the roots of the game. Okay. That's developing an environment to respect the rules of the game. Okay. Respect our opponents, respect the officials, respect our teammates, and respect ourselves. Okay. The roots of the game. ROOTS. Rules, opponents, officials, teammates, and self. The game is going to last a lot longer than we play or coach it. And it's going to continue to teach when people are in environments to properly teach through it. We need to respect it. We may not always agree with a rule. We may not always agree with the behavior of an opponent. We may not always agree with an official. Weird, right? We may not always agree with a teammate. Okay? We may not always agree with ourselves, but we need to have the utmost respect for all of those elements because of the important roles that they play. And this is vitally important for a life lesson because there's rules in life. They're called laws. There's going to be rules in their workplace environments everywhere they go. Again, they may not always agree with them, right? There's going to be opponents everywhere we go. There's competition for business every single day in what you do full time, right? And opponents, again, force you not get complacent, force you to continue to find ways to innovate and get better. That's extremely important. Officials, they have a very important job of keeping things safe and fair, okay? And I want to quickly mention on officials, there's two reasons why officials officiate. Two primary reasons. They love the game and they love the kids, okay? It's not the money. They don't get paid enough to be berated, okay? It is not the money. It's because the exact same reasons coaches coach. You love the game and you love the kids, okay? They're an extension of our organization. They're teammates in this developmental space. We need to treat them as such. So that's very, very important. And then teammates, we talked about a lot about, really creating this environment of filling each other's emotional tanks. And then yourself, always try to strive for that elm. So I'm going to pause there.
And I want to chime in real quick on that one too, because something I want, again, everyone to think about and realize is with this roots. And again, the topic we're kind of talking about today is how can we help maximize peak performance out of our athletes through our influence as coaches. And something to realize is with this ROOTS, 4 of the 5 are not in our control. 4 of those 5 things are topics or places or people that we cannot control, and our athletes need to realize they cannot control, but they must respect. The only one that they can is self. That's the only one. They cannot change the rules. They cannot change their opponents. They cannot change the officials, and they cannot change their teammates. To be completely honest, they can try and influence them, but they cannot change them. They're not in their control, but they can control their self. And I think that's how we can help maximize their peak performance, is to help them understand that if they focus on what they can control in even this right here, but respect what they cannot and learn to adapt and make themselves better through it, it's going to help every player and individual grow to hit that level that we want them to in time, for sure.
Amen. And I think it's vitally important that we make them aware that they can't control those things, right? Be proactive in making them aware. So I'm gonna pause there. I know we're already at the top of the hour, Marcy. I don't know if you want to still allow a few minutes.
Yeah, we normally go about 10, 15 over. I've mentioned this
Perfect.
at every single webinar that it's Coach Marcy time, not the clock, as it is for every coach. So no, for sure. I will. The way we can actually do this real quick is, do you want to just start taking some questions, Ryan?
Yeah, we can, and up to you. I'm comfortable with people unmuting and asking it if they want to do that, or if you want to use the chat feature, that works too.
Yeah, Ryan, I was gonna say, if you want to unshare so they can kind of see me and you.
Yeah.
I think you can do that potentially.
Done.
Perfect. Wow, there I am. So yes, if you guys, I mean, we have a smaller group today, which is wonderful, actually. So if you guys want to type it in the chat, or if you want to try and unmute, as long as we don't have so many people. And again, with these, you can ask Ryan questions. You can ask me questions. Obviously, he's a little bit more of the expert, but about what we are talking about, or about anything in regards to kind of the sports psychology side to a point. But go ahead, I'll kind of open the floor a little bit and see if we can make it happen.
Chris.
Hey, Ryan, thanks for your time. Really,
absolutely.
Really good presentation. And I love the hat collection behind you. But, hey, from sports psychology perspective, to Marcy's point, is there a certain age where you're more formidable than others, in terms of, what you're doing and what you're telling them in terms of how they process it? I'm sure it's all ages, but I'm always interested in this.
Yeah, that's a great question. There's certain aspects where we simply can't expect young age levels to grasp what we're talking about. A lot of times young athletes, and why I think a lot of athletes are struggling through this time is they're just naturally in the developmental process, their minds in more of a me focused mentality. And so they struggle seeing the importance of this sacrifice everybody's having to make, because we can't really expect them to grasp the overarching importance at the same level. I will say, in terms of the effectiveness of positive coaching, it is the same everywhere, at every single level, because, you think about your workplace environment, right? It really does not have any specific limitations in terms of what age people need to receive positive information, positive feedback, and positive interactions and nonverbals and whatnot. That's true everywhere. We have Dusty Baker. We have just a ton of professional coaches and athletes. Our primary spokesperson's Phil Jackson, who's won 11 NBA championships. So they use Steve Kerr. They all utilize a lot of the same methodology because it works. In terms of getting into specifics about like at what age can they start to think more independently, I don't have those numbers, off the top of my head. I know they've been worked into the way we deliver our programming, because there's certain aspects that we can't deliver this type of programming to kids unless it's in a more high engaging, quick moving environment, because their attention spans are shorter.
Yeah, no, thanks. I appreciate the perspective. A quick question. So have you interacted with Phil Jackson at all as part of this process?
I have not personally. I've had a chance to interact with Julie Foudy and Mia Hamm and Brandy Chastain, who, believe it or not, I think are probably just about to wrap up. They were replaying the 99ers game on FS1 tonight, and they were going to do some commentary. But no, I've gotten to meet some just incredible people through this experience. I mean, here locally, Coach Lindsay Gottlieb with the Cavs is on our national advisory board. Joe Thomas is on our national advisory board. So a lot of the head sports psychologist for the Cleveland Indians is on our national advisory board, Dr. Charlie Marr. So I've been very fortunate to meet some people that are way smarter than I am. and way more deeply ingrained in the psychological and science behind it all.
Yeah, that's cool. I appreciate the Q&A and taking the time. So good
Absolutely.
stuff.
Thank you, Chris.
Anybody else have any other questions? Pretty quiet across the board.
Can I make a comment, I guess? Hold on a second.
Yeah.
You probably don't want to see my cat anymore.
This is Al.
Good looking cat though.
Al over in Parma.
Yeah.
Hi, Al.
Oh, sorry, I didn't turn the light on. I was just going to say, kind of in addition to what Chris was asking about, I feel like, because he said, what age, is there a difference in, how you're reaching the players? Here's one thing that I've found, and this is just through experience and working with little kids and then high schoolers, is if you create a program and a mentality that the players believe in, it doesn't matter if they're 6 or they're 16, they're going to give you the effort. They're going to try. Right now, Parma is doing, this is just one little example. Parma is we're doing club Zoom practices. So
Love it.
Twice a week, I'll have a Zoom practice. We send the info out to the club. Any of the players can join. I do 2 of them at 3 on 2 different days, and then one of our other coaches does 1 at 6. But anyways, the ages in the Zoom practice, like we've got more like 7 and 8-year-olds than like anybody else that are doing this. We've got all ages, but we've got more of these 7 and 8-year-olds who are doing it, and most of them are my players, but they just love it. They're asking their parents. They're saying, hey, like do we have those Zoom practices again this week? So
That's awesome.
So even these little kids, just the program that we've kind of built for them, and they got them to enjoy it. They want to give the effort. They want to know when the online thing is. They want to get out there. So just a huge part of it, and this is just from my experience doing it, but a huge part of it is just creating a program that the players want to be a part of. They want to be a part of it. They believe in it. They want to learn. What are you going to teach me today? Like, teach me something. I trust you. I know you're here to teach me something good. Teach me something good, and the players are there giving you the effort.
Al, I think that's spot on. I mean, I've had similar experiences, obviously baseball more than anything, where it's actually harder to teach older players newer things and expand their mindset because they've been changed or I don't want to say soured, but the external influences have weighed on them so much greater at a later age, where they've developed this mindset of I am this or I am this. Somebody's already told me I'm this. I already know this. And there's a lot of coaches. I mean, we just did a workshop with a college partner, and one of the college coaches who's been coaching for 20 years, he goes, what do you do with the know-it-all kid? Right? Where you tell them something and the kid says, I know, coach, I know. And then they go out and make the exact same mistake. Like, what do you do with that kid? And we're like, well, you change your approach so that I know is not a possible answer, because clearly they don't know. They're displaying that they don't know. They're not understanding what you're trying to tell them. So instead of saying this kid just doesn't get it, I'm going to have to cut this kid or I'm going to have to release this kid or whatever, change your approach, right? Look in the mirror and say, hey, okay, what can I do? Like, I can change my approach so that I know is not a possible answer. So like, talking about, when we're doing different skills, right? Instead of being like, I saw this, you can be like, what did you feel there? Right? Did you feel this, or what were you focusing on? Right? Were you focusing on, your drive foot? Were you focusing on any number of different pieces? And so changing your approach to help these kids understand and adapt better is always the first approach to take. And Marcy and I talked about it a little bit earlier in the day. So many of us as coaches start immediately going, well, this is my philosophy as a coach, right? And I think that's really important to start. But when your philosophy starts getting in the way of you being able to develop success in a player, then it needs to go, Because at the end of the day, what's more important, the way you teach or the way they learn, right? And so if we all know the way they learn is more important because our job is to teach them. So if we're hitting roadblocks in terms of the way we approach things, we need to change it, right? Because it's all about them and their development. So I love that. That was great.
Awesome. Well, what we'll do is, again, I have obviously Ryan's contact info and everything. And then Ryan has been, as he mentioned a couple times, super gracious, sent me a whole list of different resources that I will be emailing out to everybody who registered. I'll probably do it tomorrow morning. So you'll get access to all of it. And there, again, he has a discount code if anybody wants to go and do one of the online PCA programs themselves. And obviously, along with that, if any of your organizations are interested in kind of being a partner with PCA, they do offer workshops where they would come to your facility, have an instructor, someone like Ryan, or there's a couple of others in the area who would come and run more of a hands-on workshop. And Ryan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you guys you could do a player-focused one, a coach-focused one, a parent-focused one. So you can focus it on different areas. So again, what I'll do, if Ryan, if you're okay, when I send out the email, I'll include maybe your email in the bottom so that if anybody wants to reach out to you specifically or has questions about potentially partnering with their organization and yours, you can, chat more in depth on an individual basis.
That's perfect. And just so you know, we're a nonprofit organization. So we've got a ton of free resources out there. The way we deliver programming, like Marcy said, is live interactive workshops. Our big thing with those is we don't want to sit here. This was a lot more presentation format, me speaking, than our workshops are. We really try to make our workshops a lot more high level engagement, draw information out of coaches, right? And then help redirect it in a way that's going to be more beneficial for the program. So that's our live workshops. We have our online courses, and just so you know, with that online course code, the course, all of our content's about an hour to an hour and a half to 2 hours in duration each time. So when you give you that discount code, it would be $20 to take the 1 hour online course. We've got a hierarchy of coaches courses. So there's like 5 different levels. But you'll be able to see all that information. The other thing, our free resource website is PCA DevZone. So PCADEVZONE.org. There's like 2,000 best practices and blogs and videos from our National Advisory Board members and just incredible coaches. So use that resource, share it with your parents, share it with your kids, share it with your fellow coaches. Because there's a ton of really good stuff there. If you want to follow us on social media, our local Twitter handle is PCA_Cleveland. And our national Twitter handle is @PositiveCoachUS. We're also on Facebook. We have a national Instagram account. If you want to connect with me personally on LinkedIn, I'm very active on LinkedIn, so please feel free. And then, yes, Marcy will definitely share, my contact information. So just know that within your own organizations, there's a variety of ways that we can provide support, whether it's completely free resource, take it and use it, to doing something more intentional with actual training of your coaches and parents and athletes. So just know we're here. We want to be an extension of your board. We want to be a teammate. We get to work with incredible organizations, and we're just here to support. So reach out and utilize me as a resource anytime.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. I actually was taking notes as well, even though I've been through a couple of these. I was like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. And hopefully all the coaches that are on this walked away with something that, again, that it was an aha moment, something that they felt that they could apply, or something that they've heard and it was twisted in a little bit different way, that now it's a new idea that they can create within their own mind and modify for their teams or themselves or anybody within their organization. One quick, obviously, for those of you on here, and then we'll end this. Next week, we have our next webinar, which is another really exciting one. We're going to be talking about how to be the best coach that you can be, and it's going to be about positive and important coaching values and ethics. We're going to have 3 collegiate coaches as our guest speakers. We're going to have Nate Norman, who is currently the head women's soccer coach at the University of Notre Dame over in South Bend. We're going to have Jen Simonetti, who is the head women's soccer coach at Case Western Reserve here in Cleveland. And then we're going to have Erin Rogers, who is the head women's soccer coach down at Ohio University in Athens. And they're going to just be talking about kind of their experiences as coaches and how they feel, what they use, and the ideas and the values that they kind of formulate to help them be the best versions of themselves as coaches, and how we as coaches underneath in a youth organization can try and either emulate those or modify them or take some of the ideas and use them within ourselves. So it'll be a perfect kind of follow-up to what we talked about today. But again, Ryan, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here. If anybody has any questions, you can obviously reach out. You all know my email. And again, I'll be sending this information out tomorrow morning to anybody who registered, so you'll have access to everything.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Marcy. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good one.